crafters, welcome back to another video. Today's project has been kind of a long time coming in a lot of respects. The fabric that I'm using is kind of vintage. The pattern I'm using is definitely vintage. And the timing for this project, well, the time is now. Let me explain. During the pandemic, I started doing some research on vintage patterns for 1940s dresses. And I've been interested in making a dress from the 40s for myself for a while. It can be hard to find 40s styled dresses, especially in cotton fabric. So I often find 80s dresses that I love, but I was trying to find like a cotton shirt dress perfect for summer, and I had a hard time finding what I was looking for. So I decided to try to make my own. I found a vintage pattern that I could download and print from Etsy, and I will link the Etsy seller, of course, in the description. But that was perfect because, hey, during the pandemic, I couldn't go pattern shopping. So I purchased that pattern. I made a mock-up. I learned how to do the pattern. It took a little bit of time because the vintage pattern kind of assumed I had more skills than I really do. So it was a learning process. But once I had kind of made a practice partial dress, I then actually made a dress using remnant sheet fabric. Yeah, it was from like an old fitted sheet that I had. So I actually posted that dress on the blog. I'll link down to that. That was my first project. And now I feel like, okay, I made this pattern. I have modified this pattern. Yes, I basically know how it works. Now it's time to make a dress out of some fabric that I really love. Now that's onto the fabric. Yes. Isn't it beautiful? It is vibrant. Oh my gosh. I mean, there is cherry red, teal. There's even some purple on the flowers, a little bit of yellow, and of course the black background. Here's how the fabric is vintage. Vintage. I actually picked out this fabric when I was a kid, and my mom was planning to make a dress for me. Of course, hey, moms are busy people. And I did not pick out an easy pattern. Sorry, Mom. So needless to say, the dress didn't really happen. And my mom actually gifted me this fabric a few years ago. And it's been in my craft stash. I knew I wanted to do something with it, but I kind of forgot about it until the pandemic. And I couldn't go to the craft store and pick out fabric. In my region, I still can't do in-person shopping. So this is the perfect time. I've got to use this fabric. Because I love it. I still love it. So this is the fabric. Time just seems right. It's also my birthday coming up. And hey, in times of stress, major economic unfunness, like this is really unfun. Stress, unfun, birthday, need for good things. Obviously, I'm gonna make a dress. Like, that's just the logical conclusion. This is exactly what I gotta do right now. This is the time. I'm gonna put in the time. It's probably gonna take me a few days to do this, and it'll probably take me longer than I think, but this is it. We're gonna do this. We're gonna make this dress happen, and let me show you the fabric, let me show you the pattern, and I'll let you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Well, here is our excellently vibrant fabric. I love this stuff. I loved it when I was a kid. I love it now. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. It's really bright in here, but it's got reds. It's got a little bit of purples around the blooms. It's got this great almost teal aqua. And then, of course, the black background. Ah, I love this stuff. But, of course, let's talk pattern. I'm going to try to focus a little bit better. Here's the fabulous pattern that I got from Etsy. I was able to download the pattern and our vintage sewing guide. This is so fun. It's also stretched my pattern reading abilities a lot. There's a little less detail than I would expect from a modern pattern. I feel like ladies in this time must have known a lot more about sewing, just in general. So there's less information included. Some of this definitely took me some time, and I'll show you the parts that were a little tricky for me, but this was really a cool pattern. And here's kind of, the example of finished dress, and oh my gosh, it's so cute. It would be really exciting to make this fabric that had always liked and turn it into a dress. So this is going to be an extended project. This will take a little time, but I think it'll be worth it. It'll be fun to see this fabric turn into a dress finally, and yeah, I think this is the time to do it. I'm excited. Here are the pattern pieces. You can see all those little gray numbers scattered across the pieces. Those were the numbers that when I downloaded and printed this pattern, the numbers told me how to line up the pages basically in a grid. I was able to tape them together and cut out the pieces. That definitely took me some time. So the first time you're using a downloadable pattern, you gotta give yourself a little time and patience to do that. But I really appreciated the work this Etsy seller had done. These were pretty straightforward to put together, and I got that step done. So this is the second dress, of course, that I've made from this pattern. So I have got that part taken care of. Let me show you something else I did the first time I made this pattern as well. Of course, I had to make a mock-up, and I know this isn't pretty, but I really wanted to find out how this pattern would fit me before I used good fabric. Let me see if I can straighten this a bit. Yeah, I learned a lot making this mock-up, so it really helped me feel more confident later on when I used my fabric to make the real dress. I learned that I didn't really like these the bits on the sleeve, sorry, darts? Yeah, darts. I didn't like the darts on the sleeves. I also found out I needed to take in the shoulders a bit. I needed to take in the side seams quite a bit, and then I needed to enlarge the armhole to make up for me taking the side seams in. So that was a little bit of work and a certain amount of frustration. And then when I did make the dress, I still had some fitting issues to work out, but it really helped. It's another step. I know it takes a lot of patience, but it's great to work out the kinks, figure out the pattern, and then you use your real fabric. So I feel like this is now my second time using this pattern. I think I'm ready to use some of this favorite fabric. And yeah, now I've got to lay out the pattern pieces on the fabric and cut those out. And I will check back with you guys in a little bit. Okay, we got the pieces cut out. I laid out my fabric, doubled, put those pattern pieces on top, pinned them down, and cut them out. Yeah, a couple pieces are cut on the fold, so if you're wondering where the rest of them are, yep, it's all there. I did want to show you, though, the vintage cutting guide from the original pattern, which is included with the download. This is just awesome. Oh my gosh, look how they're jamming those pattern pieces onto the fabric. There's such little waste. It's kind of amazing. This dress was made in 1943, so during war years of rationing and trying to save supplies for the war efforts. So, my gosh, ladies making this dress were making use of all of their fabric. Everything they could use, they were putting into this dress. That was pretty awesome. The finished dress also doesn't use much in the way of notions. Like, it's closed with buttons, hooks and eyes, and a couple snaps, I believe. So not a lot of material or hardware used in this dress. Very efficient design. Super cool. Cool piece of history there. So back to our pattern pieces. My next step is to unpin the pattern, and then I want to go around with each piece that has little dashes and dots and mark those dots onto the fabric. It's going to take me a little bit of time. It's a little bit fiddly, but if I can do this part well, it's going to make the sewing a lot more straightforward. It's kind of more like connect the dots because I know where to do each step because I will have it already marked. Couple places where I'm going to do that. Our lovely bodice, of course, has some pleats on the shoulders. That's kind of cool. Then I've got some markings here showing me where the button placket kind of gets folded under, kind of like that. And then the buttons there, I'll want to make those marks. My back bodice has a couple little darts in the back. The sleeve's kind of cool. The original pattern calls for quite a few darts across the top of that pattern piece. The first time I made this dress, I did do the darts on the shoulders. At my skill level, it was kind of hard to get those darts even. So that was a bit of a pain. I also found that it made a very puff sleeve. Like, it made a strong looking shoulder. Now, I know ladies in the 40s loved a really strong shoulder look, but just on me, it was a little bit much. So I think I'm going to kind of save myself a little work, and I'm going to do 2 lines of stitching and then gather this top part of the puff sleeve, and I'll gather that in when I sew the sleeves into the armhole. I've also shortened the sleeves quite a bit just for a better look on me. A couple other alterations that I've made to this pattern. I also took in the shoulders a tiny bit. I took in the sides a bit from the original. My armhole has been modified a little bit as well. And I did all of that work the first time I made the dress. I made a mock-up of scrap fabric just to see how this dress fit. I was actually surprised that it fit as well as it did because sometimes vintage garments run small. This one fit pretty well. So I did have to take it in a bit, but I was able to make those modifications. So I feel like I'm kind of confident here. I'm going to unpin these things, make the markings with either tailor's chalk or my disappearing fabric pen, and I will get back to you guys. Okay, as you can, well, kind of see, I've been using my tailor's chalk to mark the placement for the darts and the pleats and some of the buttonhole placements and the opening in the side of the skirt where I'm gonna insert snaps, and as many things as I could figure out to mark, I marked. Hopefully I didn't miss too many of them. Hopefully I didn't add in too many I didn't need. But as you can see on the right, I started pinning those shoulder gathers for the front of the bodice. As you can see on the left, I've got some little tiny darts that I've marked and pinned on the back side of the bodice as well. I've got to finish pinning, and then I think I'm going to try to sew the darts, and maybe the rest of this evening I'll try to dive in on constructing the bodice a little bit more. I'm not quite sure how far I'm going to get because I'm getting hungry and it's about dinner time. So I'll get as far as I can, and then I will check back in with you guys tomorrow and show you what I've done. Okay, see you then. Hey, good morning, everybody. Okay, so progress report. I did actually end up getting quite a few things done yesterday evening, but I also ran into some snags that really slowed me down too. So I'll kind of talk you through what happened. As you can kind of tell, I've got part of a bodice there, and the 2 sleeve pieces, which I'll talk about those in a second. But yeah, with the bodice, I first, of course, sewed the pleats from the shoulder and the darts on the back, and then I was able to sew the bodice pieces together at the shoulders and the side seams. After that, I put on the collar. It's a little hard to see, but there we go. Got that right there. Now, that's about the part where, yeah, the collar took some work because the collar was longer than the area that they seemed to want me to attach it to, and you kind of had to ease it around the curve, and it still was too long anyway. That took a little while, but I got it on there. But then that was about the time I ran into the snags. And actually the fact that I discovered the snags is an improvement over past experience because hey, I actually tried on the bodice before I tried putting the sleeves on. Woohoo, that's progress. Um, and yeah, I've made this pattern before and I have modified it, but I'm still working on my modifying skills because I tried on this bodice and the armholes were too small. And I'm kind of annoyed with armholes because I get sweaty, and if it's too high, it just bugs me and I don't wear the garment. So I had to go in and make some changes. So when I had done my dress the last time, I'd modified the pattern. I'd taken in the side seams to get the top to fit me a little better. And then that, of course, kind of threw off the armhole. And I had made it a little longer. I'd made it a little bit wider for my past dress. But then I tried this on and it was just still too high. And then there was too much fabric kind of coming beyond my shoulders. And I'm realizing I probably should have a French curve ruler at this point in my life, which I don't, so that's on my shopping list. But I tried on the garment, I made some chalk marks, and I ended up cutting the armhole down a little lower, as I said, in the front. So even a little bit more than I had before, and then making it just a little bit bigger. I even trimmed off a bit of the shoulder because that was just too much. And then I trimmed off a little bit from the back, of course, doing that to both sides. I tried to go small so that I didn't just wreck my fabric. So I trimmed a bit, tried it on again, found I could remove a little bit more, and so kind of went back and forth, but I think it's better now. I also added those notes to my pattern so that hopefully I don't mess this up again. Ugh. But anyway, that took me a little bit of time, but I think it's better now, and I'm really grateful that I figured that out before I tried putting the sleeves on because, yeah, I've done that before. That's not fun. So that's an improvement. Our collar here is, well, it's in the works. Each piece of the front bodice has this extension, and this extra fabric is going to actually end up getting turned under, and it will become a collar, the rest of the collar and the button placket. That's a little tricky, so let me show you that in the next video here, and I think that's going to be the next step. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see, this is the page of the pattern dealing with the lower collar slash formation of the button placket in the front. Yeah, the first time I made this dress, I went, what? Of course, the description of what to do is also on the other page, which then made it harder to figure out what on earth is going on. Yeah, this time when making this dress, I also went, wait, what? What do I do? Anyway, so as far as I can tell, let's just scoot that over here. I've got one side basically done, so that's kind of our example side, and then this side over here, I'll kind of try to show you what I did. I hope I understood it correctly. This is my best guess at my skill level. This is what I think I'm doing it right. So the first step was they asked for the edges of this kind of extended flap of the bodice to be stitched under. So I did that. And then they want you to take this edge and actually pin it over the collar. Here's my collar. I'm coming around and pinning it down, and then I would sew it at the neckline. That then kind of creates this little pocket that would get turned right side out, kind of like that. And then that would then make, whoa, your collar and placket. Let me kind of show you. That one's already been done over here. I tried to put a little paper under here to show you, but yeah, so that extended piece was stitched over the collar. Oh, there's my collar. Stitched down and then pop that right out, right sides out. and I just put the pins in place to help hold everything closed. Let's get our paper under there just to help a little bit. So there you go. The extended edge of the bodice then kind of forms the lower collar, and then we have this nicely doubled over part for buttons and buttonholes. I'm also going to put in a little bit of interfacing on the inside underneath where I'll put the buttons and buttonholes just for extra reinforcement. But, oh my gosh, I think we'll almost have the front of the bodice done. That to me is the trickiest part of the whole thing. So I hope I'm doing it right. I've liked the result on my previous project, so I think we got it. We're on the right track. Yes! Okay, progress report. So in making some final touches to the bodice, I ran into some snags. First of all, I realized that when I sewed the collar, the back collar on, I'd caught some of the shoulder seams in a very weird way. So I had to undo some stitching and try to restitch that back on and try to make sure there wasn't any issues under there, and that took a bit of time. And then I also followed the directions and covered that back, what kind of like collar seam with some seam binding. So that's kind of a nice edge back there. So got that set. And then I've also added some gathering stitches to two places on the front. So place here, and then two places on the back as well. You can see over here I use those stitches to gather the fabric in a little bit. Going to be doing the same thing over here. Let's see, I've got two lines of really big stitches, and I'm going to take just one of the threads, probably just that one, and just pull it along. It's going to help gather my fabric a little bit. And I'm going to need this when I attach the bodice to the skirt. I know from past experience I don't have to gather it too much, but that's going to add a little waist gather there. So I haven't gotten too much farther on the bodice, or it doesn't look like it, but I think I'm about ready to move on to the sleeves. So let's talk sleeves here for a second. You might notice that I've actually shrunk the sleeves a little bit. They used to curve about 3/4 of an inch more, and I've shrunk them a little bit to reduce the puffiness. I've also run some gathering stitches on these guys so that I can gather them up into the puff sleeve and get it to fit the armhole on the bodice. My next step with these guys is to, of course, sew them into a sleeve, and then I'll use those gatherings to help me fit them into the bodice. I think I'm going to tackle the sleeves next. Wish me luck. Okay, so I have stitched on the sleeves. It's looking like a dress. I've also tacked the button placket closed. Let me just show you the sleeves. There we go. Yep, got those in place. So I think our bodice is basically ready to be attached to the skirt. So let me show you the skirt. All right. Whoa. Got those pieces ready to go. I also have the side slit open that matches the slit open in the bodice. This is going to end up being closed by a hook and eye and snaps. But we have our front and back panels sewn together. For our skirt, I think the next step is, getting that skirt attached to the bodice and then finishing work. So hemming the sleeves, hemming the skirt, buttonholes, buttons, getting the hooks and eyes in the sides. So, still got a certain amount of work to do, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'll work on that skirt and shirt first. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Hey, so here's the skirt. Believe it or not, the bodice is actually tucked inside with right sides together. Here's the bodice. And I used the gathering lines on the front and back of the bodice to get it to line up with the skirt. And yeah, that took a while. Lots of pins. Of course, our side flaps are open for now. But I think I'm about to attach the skirt. Gonna sew that up. In the meantime, you might notice I have a lot of zigzags on my seam allowances. That's kind of my cheater's version of serging the seams. So I just did a little zigzag stitch to keep some of the edges from raffling quite as bad. I know there are better ways to do that, but that's what I did. That's why it's there. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, add a skirt, and I think we might have a dress. Here we go. Okay, you guys. We have most of a dress. Yay! We still have some work to do, though. Gotta get the buttons and buttonholes. I'm excited. Gonna use some vintage buttons from my grandma on the front, so I'm excited about that. Gotta do some hemming on the sleeves and the bottom hem. Gotta close up this opening with some hooks and eyes. So there's still some work to go. I'm hoping to finish at least a lot of this tonight. Tomorrow is my birthday, so I might end up finishing a little bit then. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. So I may end up wearing this the next day and showing it to you guys with some sunny weather. But I'm excited. I think this is going to turn out really nice and hopefully be worth the work. So I'm going to get back to work. I will see you guys a little bit later for the grand reveal and show you the finished product. Okay, see you then. Okay guys, here's the finished dress. It did take longer than I thought, but I'm really pretty happy with it. It's exciting to use the fabric and to finally use these vintage buttons and get this vintage pattern coming to life. I'm now off to go buy some cherries. I'm really excited and hopefully go home and eat some cupcakes. This is the day after my birthday, so I'm gonna keep on celebrating. But hope you guys enjoyed. If you found it amusing, punch that like button to let us know and subscribe for more videos from Partners in Craft. Stay crafty, you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye. Cherries, 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 cherries. Woo!